everybody, welcome. My name is Laurie Ure. I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker and a certified bioenergetic therapist. And my topic today is a body-mind journey from depression and anxiety to vitality. I'm going to talk with you about the bioenergetic approach to treating depression and anxiety. So think of this as a journey from depression and anxiety to vitality, a bioenergetic path. The image here is a labyrinth that's in my yard next to my cottage, which is my office. And if you're not familiar with the labyrinth, you walk in starting at the path there, and then it winds around each of the 4 quarters sections of the labyrinth. And sometimes you're not sure where you are on the journey, and you're even going the direction opposite from where you think you might want to be going. But you end up where you want to be at the middle. And same is true with this journey from depression and anxiety into vitality. Sometimes you're not sure which direction you're going or where you're headed, but by following the path, and it's not a straightforward path from here to there, you can end up where you want to go. So I want to start by defining depression. And I'd invite you, if you're willing, to join in with me and check. Remember, it might be right now, or it might be another time in your life when you actually felt depressed. And notice what you felt in your body, and even exaggerate it. So you might kind of pull your shoulders in, you might notice some breathing decreases, and notice what happens in your thoughts. Might be not feeling so great, feeling blue, down, feeling hopeless, some despair. You might be thinking about not such great thoughts about yourself or about life. So give that a shake off. Let that go. Open shoulders, check your breathing. And the definition that I like of depression comes from my colleague Terry Hunt, who's a wonderful bioenergetic therapist and also a trainer for the Massachusetts Society for Bioenergetic Analysis. He says that depression is an economic solution to a perceived impossible condition. It impacts our body. That's the economic solution. So the energy is pulled inward, not a lot of movement, not a lot of life, not a lot of vitality. It affects our mind, negative thoughts, guilt, not looking forward to things, no motivation. And it has a spiritual component. Alexander Lowen, who started bioenergetics in the 1950s, talked about depression as a lack of faith, and a lack of faith in oneself and in the process of life, and a lack of connection to something larger than ourselves, or to a possibility that things can get better. And it's to a perceived impossible condition. Sometimes the condition really is impossible, such as if you've lost a loved one, or a home, or for people of color in this country, in the United States, who start off in life in a one-down position. And the odds are against you, against them. And that condition can seem completely impossible, that things can get better, or that there's hope. There's a statistic right now about a very high rate of suicide among young Black teenagers. And that's something we should all be concerned about and tending to, because it comes from that sense of despair, I believe, and hopelessness, that things could actually be better for them, and that they can live in a world where they can feel safe and able to have a good life. Now, sometimes the condition is not impossible, but we perceive it as impossible. And that's where, as therapists, we can specifically have an impact on people about their perceptions and helping to change those perceptions and seeing where they can have hope, where things are, change is possible and things can get better for them in time. So an overview of depression. There are different types of depression and they have different degrees. So there is depression connected with a particular situation, again, the loss of somebody or something important to us. And there is chronic long-term underlying depression that goes on in a person's life for decades even. And then there's situational depression where something happens and it affects them in immediacy, but they get over it in time. There's also degrees of depression. So some depression is severe. People have difficulty getting out of bed, functioning, having any motivation to do things that they could enjoy, feeling hopeless. And there's depression that kind of lives beneath the surface at a low level, but doesn't impact people to the extreme of not being able to function or thinking about suicide. Depression has a variety of symptoms that affect different parts of us. So physical symptoms include decreased energy, decreased concentration, change in sleep habits, either sleeping too much or not being able to sleep, and a change in appetite. Sometimes, again, either eating too much or not being able to eat at all. There are mental symptoms, the loss of concentration, difficulty focusing, having persistent negative thoughts about oneself or about life. Also excessive guilt. Spiritual symptoms, like I mentioned before, not feeling connected to something larger, not having faith in the process of life or faith in oneself that this is difficult right now, but things will change. I can get better. It affects us emotionally, feeling sad, down, blue, discouraged, hopeless, despair. And it also affects our relationships. Depression can make it difficult to share connections with people, either to reach out to people for contact that we want, or to enjoy our connectedness with our current loved ones. There's often a connection between depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. So when there's a stressful event that is a significantly stressful event that causes trauma in us, and we're not able to do something about it at the time, oftentimes what happens in the organism is we go into an immobilization. And this is also called a freeze response. So our bodies are programmed in response to a stress to either fight the stress or to run away from the stress. And if we can neither fight nor flight, we can go into a freeze where, again, it's decreased motion, decreased energy, decreased movement, the slowing down. It's a slowing down of the body's processes. And sometimes this can persist for a long time after the initial event. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a moment. But this can be compared to if a cat is chasing a mouse and the mouse is trapped, can't go anywhere. It can either fight the cat. Sometimes the mouse will bat at a cat, but the cat's bigger than the mouse. And if it can't get away, can't fly, oftentimes it will just lie down and play dead. And the cat, if it's not hungry, will then lose interest frequently and will go away and leave the mouse alone. So it's an intelligent response from that mouse to just play dead and immobilize itself, because sometimes that saves its life. So these energetic dynamics of the immobilization, slow down, less movement can persist for a long time in a person. Also decreased breathing. And it can be out of their awareness that they've shut themselves down, decreased their breathing. So why do symptoms such as depression continue long after the trauma is past? There is a very important impact of developmental trauma. If this has occurred when a child was young and the child did not feel safe in their home environment, say there was a lot of arguing going on, significant conflicts, somebody was an alcoholic, say, and had a bad temper, or there was neglect, and no matter how hard the child tried, they couldn't get what they needed and wanted in their family. They don't come into therapy or they don't come into their adult life saying, when I was a child, I couldn't get what I needed and I wanted, so I became depressed, or my mother was depressed, or my father was depressed, and I just thought that's the way life was. They generally come into their adult life saying, I'm feeling depressed and I don't know why. Usually they don't link it back to the early experience. And part of the reason for this, and part of the reason it continues to persist, is a child doesn't know that life can be different. They think if my parents didn't take good care of me or weren't available, or there was a lot of fighting and it was dangerous, they generalized that that's the way life is. And they can't say, you know what, I need different parents because these parents are not treating me well. I'm going to go out and find some parents that are going to love me and nurture me and give me the support that I need. Instead, it becomes internalized and they say, I'm not okay. It must be because of me that these bad things are happening. And it becomes embedded in their identity. The other very important part of this is in bioenergetics, we have a perception that the body actually forms in response to early childhood events and in response to traumas. And that we can learn to read that in the body. It's sort of like if you were looking at a tree and you could read, oh, in this year there was a drought, so it didn't grow as much. And maybe this tree was too close to this tree, so the larger tree took the sun away from the smaller tree, so it's dwarfed it. Similarly, we can see if a person has pulled in shoulders and a very narrow frame, a lot of tension in their body, we can learn to read patterns of their early developmental experience from that. Conversely, if they had too much parenting and were not allowed to individuate and not allowed to protest their parents, they can have a lot of energy that's held in the body and they need help to learn to release that. Some people, their parents really didn't want them, and that's a different kind of injury that we also can see in the way the body is shaped, as well as in their story. So these early experiences form a person's unconscious beliefs about themselves and about life. Life is difficult. I can't get what I need and want, so why bother trying anyway? My parent needs me to take care of them. I have to do that in order to survive and in order to be a good person. We all want to be good children, good, and have approval. We need our parents' approval. So we focus our lives around that. But sometimes that leads to chronic depression. So because the symptoms of depression affect a whole person, treatment requires an integrated approach. We need to address a person's mind, their body, their spirit, their relationships, and their emotions. So treatment from a bioenergetic perspective of depression is not a simple do 1, 2, and 3. We focus on where the client is moment to moment and address our interventions. But among our toolkit, these are some of the options we have to help. Understanding the person's history, what happened in their childhood, and also what significant events are going on in their life or have gone on recently that are impacting them. We combine movement with feeling and with expression, help people be more in touch with what is actually happening in their body and what feelings might be blocked, where are there chronic tensions from those early childhood experiences that are blocking the movement, the flow of energy and life in their body in the present. We work with the body's energy economy through changing breathing patterns. And this relates to when a child has been shut down. It's not okay to told it's not okay to cry, it's not okay to get angry, you're too excited, your sexuality is too much. The way they shut that down is by inhibiting their breathing. And that affects their energy. So the energy's body economy then is going towards holding tension in the body to hold back those expressions and emotions. And it stops their breathing. So they're not breathing as much, they're not feeling as much, they're not as alive, as vital. So we work with opening up the breathing patterns to release those chronic tensions. And again, this is in their unconscious generally. We also work with affirming their spirit and their joy. I have a client that has a history of chronic depression from persistent early childhood trauma. And she has a house right near a beautiful beach near where we both live. And I encourage her regularly, go out, walk the beach, breathe in, soak in the air, smell the waves, feel the sand, feel the sun, or look at the clouds, and take in that joy. Sometimes this is challenging for people, and they need reminders, they need encouragement to seek out joy. And we offer therapy as a different relational experience. So for my client that has a very difficult time allowing herself to feel her emotions because this was not acceptable to her parents, I encourage her over and over again, it's okay with me for you to cry. You're going to feel better if you can let it out. And it doesn't happen quickly. We have to say it over and over and over again. And she has to experience that, my acceptance and my approval. She'll look at me sometimes like, really? And yeah, it's really okay with me. Finally, in time, it starts to sink in, oh, okay, maybe this is different now. And it is okay for me to cry. It is okay for me to feel. This person wants me here. But they have to experience that in the relationship. We also offer in bioenergetics boundaries work. So one of the ways that people get shut down is in terms of their ability to make boundaries with people in their current life. And we start with a grounding exercise and then work with putting their hands out and actually feeling their ability to make their boundaries. Now in COVID, we were told we needed to be about 6 feet apart. So if we put out our hands all the way, that's just about 3 feet. And the other person puts their hands out all the way, that's just about 3 feet. So that tells us what's about 6 feet apart. And in this culture, with our hands fully out, most of us consider that to be our personal space, unless we're on a crowded subway and people have to be closer. But to actually feel this is my space and to add those words. And when I have clients do that, and then I see what happens for them. And sometimes that elicits a memory from their childhood when they were not allowed to have their boundaries, or their boundaries were not respected. And there might be feelings that come up from that. The other way we work with boundaries bioenergetically is through reaching out, either to ask somebody for something we want or need, to be vulnerable, or to extend ourselves, to give something to somebody. So if you want, you can practice that. Do that with me for a moment. Just feel your right to make your boundary, your limit, and feel your right to reach out for what you need and want. For some people, making the boundary is easy, but reaching out is challenging. And for others, they have no problem reaching out, but making a limit is much harder. So as we do those exercises, emotions often come up for my clients. So memories from the past, sometimes deep sadness about not having had their boundaries respected when they were a child, and anger about it, that it wasn't fair how they were treated. And we work with processing all of those emotions in the safe container of our office as bioenergetic therapists. We work towards a goal of embodied self-respect, which means that I am connected to my body. I am my body. And in that body, I am no better than, nor any worse than any other body on this planet. And I can have a sense of respect for myself and respect for all of life. So in treating depression, we interweave, again, it's like the path of the labyrinth. We interweave these different interventions to help a person get their movement going, have more energy, have motivation, because there is something joyful that they might want to do, and also have connections with people and beings in their life that bring them satisfaction and fulfillment. Okay, so take a stretch, move your shoulders, take a good breath. We're going to go now to anxiety. And if you'd like, I invite you to remember a time that you felt anxious. It might be in this moment, or it might have been a time in the past. And notice what happens in your body when you feel anxious like that. Maybe your heart starts racing, or you feel your guts are moving, and maybe your hands get cold or hot. You might notice changes in your breath. And when I'm working with clients and they come in and tell me they're anxious, I say to them, what does that mean for you? What are you actually experiencing that gives you, that you're labeling anxiety? Because the first thing I want them to do is to notice their body, what's actually happening in their body. And then the second thing that I will often do is tell them, exaggerate it. So if you want, right now I want you to exaggerate, like, oh, I'm scared. What does it feel like in your body when you're anxious like that? Okay, shake that off, let that go, take a breath. So I think of anxiety, there are lots of different definitions of anxiety. I think of it as fear and motion. So there's fear that holds us back, but anxiety, there's some movement, there's some energy going on, but it's definitely related to fear. It's definitely uncomfortable for most people, causes distress. And it has to do with cut off feelings. So not feeling a whole lot besides anxiety is really calling their attention. It has physical aspects. So again, that racing heart, shallow breath, maybe its guts are moving, and it has mental components, worry. It also can include muscle tension as a chronic tightness, is a chronic physical aspect. Mental components, worry, thinking about something in the future, thinking about something in the past, thinking about bad things happening. There's chronic anxiety. And again, that can be rooted in childhood experience, being around a parent that had a lot of anxiety, or some difficult things happen in early childhood that causes a person to be afraid chronically. And there's situational anxiety in response to a particular thing happening. I have a client who has situational anxiety, who has some chronic underlying anxiety going on all the time, but especially in regards to flying. And when he even is starting to get ready for a trip where he's flying, oh no, this is going to be the time the plane goes down, and I shouldn't have gone on this trip, and why did I do it? And then he's on the plane and turbulence is happening. He's convinced that this is it, the plane's going down. He's gripping the sides of the seat, and just his anxiety goes way up around that situation in particular. The relationship with emotions. Anxiety often happens when, in my experience, there's an emotion arising in the person. So they may start to feel some sadness or anger, and that has not been okay in their past. So what happens is, as the emotion arises, they say, oh no, this is dangerous, this is bad. And they're not even connected to that as what's causing the increased anxiety. They're just aware of, I have anxiety. And sometimes then the anxiety is so uncomfortable or causes them to go down mental paths that aren't good, worrying about, oh no, I'm going to break up with my boyfriend even though I don't want to. That's that type of negative thought process. And then they stop breathing as much. And then they get anxious and afraid because they stop breathing as much and they're afraid of their anxiety. So it can also have developmental aspects. If a person chronically wasn't safe, they may feel anxious in the other people's presence, or they may feel anxious when somebody in their current life gets angry. If they were around a father, for example, who had a bad temper. So something in the present can trigger the anxiety from the past. Anxiety and the body. I like this picture because to me, it kind of describes what often happens. There's a lot going on up in people's heads. So a lot of energy moving. It's not like depression where it's frozen. There's movement going on, but it's up in the head. They're not grounded. It often happens in response to something arising in the body, an emotion arising. It inhibits breathing, and the person is focused either on the past or the future, but not on the present, not what's actually happening in their body or in the moment. It's fears, made up thoughts about what might happen or what did happen in the past. Bioenergetic, we have some excellent tools for addressing anxiety. The first of them is grounding exercises. And this involves, as you can see, these are some people in an exercise class at a conference that we hold annually in Essex, Massachusetts. And this is a classic grounding exercise from Alexander Lowen, who started Bioenergetics. You put your feet about hip width apart, and you're welcome to do this now if you would like. And toes going forward, and you can slowly bend your knees and slowly straighten. And then to add to the exercise, let your upper body hang forward, and very importantly, let your head go. And use your arms just for balance. Keep the weight in your legs. You can slowly bend your knees and slowly straighten them. And use your mind to notice what's happening in my body in the present. And just doing this exercise often with my clients helps them to calm, helps to reduce their anxiety. Sometimes if you don't have a lot of tensions and you bend and straighten your legs, you can get some vibrations going, which at first, if you're not familiar with it, can be uncomfortable, but you can learn to be more comfortable with that, and it actually feels good to get that movement going in your body in a grounded way. We also help people open up their breathing so that they're breathing more fully. And we invite a full emotional expression. So we let them know that their emotions, their sadness, their grief, their pain, their anger, their rage, their frustration can be expressed in a safe way in our office and in other places in their life when they learn to practice and learn to have some experience with their emotional expression. We explore the impact of their past and connect it to what's happening in their present. For example, I have a client who had a lot of anxiety and she didn't know why. So we started with what was triggering, what happened right before she started feeling anxious. And oftentimes it was something with her family. Somebody had done something either disrespectful towards her, or her husband had yelled at her or treated her in a mean way. And her father had been violent and had an out of control temper when she was a child. So those were triggers for, it's dangerous, something bad's going to happen. And she did not have the tools for setting limits with her family or reaching out to them to ask them for what she needed. So we worked a lot on developing those tools so that she didn't have those triggers from the past in her present life and could set limits and reach out for what she wanted with her family. I also work with having people set boundaries with their negative self-talk. So I'll say, okay, you set the boundary, and I'm going to express the negative messages, and I want you to tell me to stop. And we practice with that so that they can learn to listen to a different voice in themselves. And then they need a different relational experience. They need to know that all of their emotions are safe, that their emotions are not going to harm them. They express them in a grounded, positive way. They can feel safe inside their own skin. So here are examples. This is the grounding exercise. That's me in my office practicing the grounding exercise, which I do regularly and helps me reduce anxiety, feel calmer, sleep better. This is people at a conference, again, in an exercise class. It's a different way of doing the grounding by putting your feet up in the air and pressing into your heels. And this is breathing, opening up the breathing over the balls. One of the ways we work to increase the whole openness, reduce tensions in the whole breathing in the upper part of the body, throughout the body, from all the way from the throat to the genitals. This is an example of a different relational experience, actually feeling safe and held with the depth of one's pain, which is very important for people to experience. And in my office, I have big pillows and bats and rackets for expression in the emotion of anger safely in a way that no one or nothing gets hurt. And then this is the boundaries exercise that we practice with people. So vitality as the antidote to anxiety and depression. In the corner here is Alexander Lowen, who was very vitally alive well into his 90s. He loved working with people, loved seeing energy move and in people in their bodies and helping them to do that. Very warm eyes, very tender, but also could be very strong and very engaged. This is I believe, a mother and child, and you can see the joy and you can feel in your body the connectedness between them, the vitality that comes through that connectedness. And then the wonderful smile of the child. And the beauty of the bees and the flowers and what happens all around us all the time of life going on, and life giving life to each other, supporting each other. So vitality as a state includes having a relatively calm mind, body that again is relatively relaxed, relatively free of chronic tensions. So we might get tense in response to an event or something specific, but then can return to calm and relaxation as a foundation. An orientation to pleasure, having things to look forward to and being able to feel and enjoy pleasure of anything from a beautiful day, a walk, being outside, a flower, sexuality with ourselves or with a partner, anything that gives us pleasure, and having the orientation to enjoy that and focus on that. It includes having warmth and brightness in our eyes and access to a full range of emotions. That means we may feel angry sometimes when there's an injustice in the world, or somebody's harming us or someone or that we love and we care about. Having access to our anger to address that. Being able to feel deeply sad and deeply sorrowful for the losses and the pains that are part of life. And being able to feel joy and feel our heart and feel love and connection. And having health in our relationships. So give and take that works for us and for the people that we're close with. So I enjoy this cartoon. What if we don't change at all and something magical just happens? I know that we want something magical to just happen. We want a solution to depression and anxiety in 12 quick, easy steps, point A, point B, point C, point D, all done, boom, boom. And 1 month, 2 months, you'll have it. That's not what we offer. This work takes time and it takes repetition. Again, because we're dealing with some deep old patterns oftentimes that were formed in early childhood. Changing those doesn't happen quickly and easily. And it takes commitment. And it is for many of us a path through our life. I do the grounding pretty much every day and work with opening up my breathing, also letting my emotions go through me in a positive way. So a brief background about bioenergetic therapy. It was started in the 1950s by Alexander Lowen and John Periakos. Alexander Lowen was a client and student of Wilhelm Reich. Wilhelm Reich was a contemporary of Freud, and Reich felt that Freud had left out work with the body. Reich noticed changes, constrictions in his clients' breathing patterns with his neurotic clients. So he sought ways to help clients open up their breathing. And Lowen and Periakos worked on these exercises, developed these exercises that then became bioenergetics and core energetics through Periakos later in their work together. There are bioenergetic training programs in California, in Florida, in Massachusetts, New York, Texas, and several places in Canada as well. We're connected with the International Institute for Bioenergetic Analysis. So there's a global community of bioenergetic therapists and bioenergetic work. And it can be very fulfilling to be part of the conferences where people are there from Russia and China and South America, Brazil, Argentina, Italy, Germany, Norway, and to be in this work together as human bodies with different cultural contexts, but all connected through our commitment to our work with our bodies and with ourselves. We offer therapy referrals, training in bioenergetics, and workshops. The training is a 4-year program, and it's very in-depth. We value having a group stay together for those 4 years, and the relational aspects of that connection with one another, working out conflicts when they come up, and a deepening intimacy provides tremendous opportunities for personal and professional growth. This is the website for the International Institute of Bioenergetic Analysis, and for NANZBA, which is North American New Zealand Institutes for Bioenergetic Analysis. And here's my little cottage with the labyrinth is just to the left of it in the yard there. And my website and my email address. So I welcome you to contact me. You can sign up for my email list where you get newsletters and about blogs that I've posted and about upcoming workshops and events. Thank you very much for your participation, and I hope that you found this helpful, and I welcome hearing from you at any time.